leichter synchronisieren, Benny. So, heute reden wir mit dem Jacob. Instagram jacob.moves aus Chicago. Er ist schon da. Here we go, baby. Hey, Jacob.
How are you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me okay?
Wait a second. Oh, that's my bad. Now it should be working. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You're
yes,
good.
Awesome, man. Good to see you. How are you?
Good. Nice to meet you virtually.
Yes. I mean, we're pretty far. There's a lot of distance in between the two of us.
Yeah, seriously. When I was calling you last week, I was like trying to figure out how to make an outgoing call from the
somewhere
States.
else.
Yeah, I was like, I've never done this before. This is so interesting.
Yeah, so you have to dial in the country number first, then skip the 0, and then.
Yeah, and I guess there's an exit code too for the States. Like you have to dial the exit code for the States, and then the country code, and then the phone number. And I was like, oh wow, learn something new. Always learning.
This is how you do an international call.
Exactly right.
All right, Jacob, let's get rolling. So tell me a little bit more about yourself. So just for everyone, the millions of people listening, there's probably 5 people or 10, whatever. So you've been recommended from a lovely person, Chris Gately, because I always ask my podcast guests to more or less give me not random people, but make an educated guess for people who are very interesting to talk to. Because that's what I love doing, just talking to people, having good conversations about ABCD. And Chris was polite enough to recommend you. So welcome to the show. Just tell me a little bit more about yourself. Are you a coach? Are you a gym owner? Are you coaching group classes, people? Where are you at? Where are you located? Just a very small resume for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm located in Chicago, Illinois, in the States. And I am a fitness coach and do a mixture of one-on-ones and group classes. So group classes take up a majority of my time, and one-on-ones tend to come up when folks want to work on something specific. So maybe their shoulder's been nagging them and they want to address that issue, build strength, build mobility. Then we'll get a one-on-one set up, and depending on how intense the situation is, we may do a few sessions together or just the one and done with some homework and some check-ins. But it just depends on the client. And then I also just have people who just participate in one-on-one training, just solely, this is their fitness, right? Just on the one-on-one basis outside of the group setting. And I've been doing that I've been a group coach for, I want to say 4 years now.
Quite some time.
Yeah, quite some time. I started off coaching Olympic weightlifting. So I did like a club class of that. Found my way into the CrossFit setting, started coaching CrossFit. And still do CrossFit classes, and have now started a class that revolves around sled training, sandbag training, kind of developing the muscles associated with the different torque chains, and just like overall strength classes with barbells and things like that. So that's kind of been my journey in that coaching world.
Sweet. So which CrossFit gym are you working out at or coaching at?
Yeah, it's a gym called Notorious CrossFit Notorious or Notorious Fitness. I've been a member there since I was in high school, so I've been there about 10 years as a member. And then that's where I also started coaching Olympic weightlifting and then CrossFit. So it was the starting point there. And then I'm also going to start doing group classes at another gym, which is more like a strength studio. And they do, their programming is very similar to like standard strength and conditioning coach kind of programming.
And that's so very straightforward, like strength training, like barbell training, dumbbell training, I guess certain strength cycles, the running, assistance work, cardio parts.
Exactly, right. So like they'll start off with higher reps and then build up to lower reps, higher weights. But they're very special because they focus on, they're not forcing people into these crazy weights, or it's very tailored to the individual's goals, making sure that the person moves right first. So it's very cool to be a part of these different systems and class structures and kind of be able to bring my own flair to it.
Is that a group setting as well in the strength and conditioning gym?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It is a group setting. So it'll be like up to 10 people per class. And, everyone's working at their own pace, and then you're kind of, pushing them and guiding them along the way.
You mentioned something interesting because you said the focus in that gym, in the latter gym, is people moving well. What does it mean for you? Because we hear this all the time, like we wanna work on the quality of movement, like you throw in mobility and range of motion, you throw in moving well, you throw in having clean technique. What does it mean to you, like personally? How do you approach that? Well, almost like boring words like well and clean and stuff like this. So what does it mean to you?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you where like things like moving well, mobility and all that stuff, they're kind of like buzzwords, like people use them because they're popular and everyone, there's no like concrete definition for it. So for me, moving well is being able to properly execute a movement pattern based on the individual, and based on the individual's needs and goals, right? I always tell like whoever I'm working with, whether it's one-on-one or in the group setting, I tell them, let's say we're squatting, I see that they're forcing a ass to grass squat. They lose tension, their core collapses, knees come in like crazy, feet are all over the place. I say, okay, right now you're not there, so let's raise that depth a little bit to something where you can keep that tension to where your hips can function properly, core is engaged, and work there with the squats, and then we'll work on getting lower with proper tension on the side, so then you can then apply it, right? So I think moving well is totally dependent on the individual, their current abilities and their current goals, because all those things outside of the individual's anatomy are constantly changing. So yeah, making movement achievable and doable for people is, I guess, a big part of moving well for me.
Got it. So let me play a little bit devil's advocate here, because because we shouldn't agree on everything, right? And because I have not found like I have an answer for that question, what moving well means, what moving properly means. but I'm still looking for the answer or another piece to it. So let me challenge you a little bit. Because you said properly executing movement patterns. And then you mentioned something like working on the depth. What does it mean to you, like practically speaking? So let's start with movement patterns first. What do you see as movement patterns, and how do you teach people that in terms of muscle engagement, if that's a focus for you? That's already a little bit of a biased question
here. Yeah. So movement patterns, got dogs in the background.
That's totally fine. Totally.
Movement patterns to me, it's kind of funny because we've attached names to patterns, right? Like squat, hinge, press, squat, hinge, press, and pull.
Yeah.
And we have kind of said that these things are prevalent in the day-to-day tasks that we have. But if that's all we had was squat, hinge, push, pull, life would be so boring and we wouldn't be able to do much, right? So like in the gym setting, the focus is squat, hinge, push, pull. But I also in like small doses want people to get creative with their movement and not kind of put themselves in this box. So I guess I would say that the movement patterns, those 4 movement patterns, are like a starting point for me, and for others, right, is to get those hamstrings working, the quads, chest, shoulder, right, get the muscles working in these kind of standardized linear movements and exercises. And then once you're strong, let's try to apply them and get creative in the rotational aspect, or can we hang from a pull-up bar and do a shoulder press at the same time, just like get crazy with it, because that's where the exciting stuff happens, and that's where fitness is fun and just like applicable is expressing.
Exactly. That's interesting, because I see movement patterns a little bit differently, because I see them, or I view them as like there's a technical part of it and there's an artistic part to it, right? So artistic part means like you're expressing yourself, whether it's through whatever animal movements, dancing, yoga. So basically it's just moving your body around in space, and making it look like really cool. Otherwise it's shitty. And then there's the technical side of it, as you mentioned. What kind of disturbed me for a very long time was exactly that, like press, hinge, push, pull. You have those 4 movement patterns, which are immediately linked in your head with an exercise, basically, right?
Yeah.
So when everybody's talking about hinging, everybody's thinking about, I don't know, deadlift and Romanian deadlift and hopefully kettlebell swings.
Yeah.
When you think about squatting, you think about back squatting, you think about just doing a squatting motion. So I view it a little bit differently, because I think we should step away from this so people get that differentiation between, like, there's muscles, there's movement patterns, and then there's exercises. So for me, there's a movement pattern, let's call it unlock the hips, right? So there's 2 basic functions of your hips. You can either lock them or you can unlock them. So you do a hinging motion, swiveling motion, or you can do locking motion, which is needed for the explosive movements, etc. So that already helps people understanding that there's a difference between a movement pattern and an exercise. Because if the movement pattern is the same name as an exercise, it's always hard for people to grasp that difference. And then we're linking just like single muscles to the movement pattern, explaining people, okay, in that movement pattern, you need to engage A, B, C, D. We're going to start with 1. We're going to run through the sequence. We're going to activate 1 muscle. We're going to execute it in the actual movement pattern, and then we're going to implement it in the exercise, right? That's why I call it a technical approach. It's not the most artsy way of coaching it. but especially like for people that are training in my gym, or generally speaking in gyms, like normal people, average Joes, soccer moms, etc. They need some sort of like guidance and they need stuff to hold on to, let's be honest, right? Because otherwise they're lost in like movement and muscles and 9 cues, etc. So that's what we're doing, that different approach, and kind of decoupling the so-called learned movement patterns from exercises and sprinkling in those muscle activations. We call it the find, stress, use principles. You find muscles, you stress the movement pattern with the desired muscle, and then you're going to implement it in an exercise. Because as you know, there's a huge difference between doing a stiff leg deadlift and doing an actual deadlift, right?
Yeah.
And that helped me at first, just figuring out, okay, how to structure that and how to explain it to people, because a movement pattern for me is one torque chain only. A movement pattern is one torque chain. An exercise is always a combination of two. Always, right? Let's take the deadlift, for example. Regular deadlift off the floor, you need excellent torque to get it off the floor, right? For most people, that's the hardest part, because if you can't do that, you're probably not going to need the second part if the bar is not moving off the floor.
Right.
So it starts with excellent torque, and then you're going to move towards internal torque. And once you split that open and be like, okay, that's your problem, that's the movement pattern you need to work on, those are the muscles, we're going to separate them, but kind of bring it together in the same session, right? This is not, okay, 60 minutes of activating a muscle and 3 weeks later you're going to practice the deadlift. No, we're gonna structure that in a class. It's a very structured approach, and people love it because they need structure at first. I'm not saying this is what you should be doing your whole life, but like activating a muscle, stressing it through a movement pattern, then actually implementing that into an exercise, it's gonna help a lot of people, even quote unquote, even if you're a dancer. Right. And then you can do your sport, whether it's dancing, yoga, or powerlifting, I don't care. But I'll be able to explain to you in a model, in a concept, what we're actually want to teach.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I love that structure, because I find that is something that has kind of made a difference in my personal fitness experience. So I started off at CrossFit, and then went into Olympic weightlifting training for like years, right? That's all I did was squat, snatch, clean, jerk, and then every accessory exercise was revolved around those three movements. And then from there, it kind of got lost. I was like doing, at the college rec center, doing deadlifts and squats, just kind of maintenance stuff, and that carried on for a little bit, and feeling a little bit overwhelmed as to what options were out there in the fitness world, where it's like, okay, well, I could do bodybuilding, or feeling like I had to put a name on it, right? Like I had to pick something.
Sure. What are you doing? Are you doing CrossFit? Are you doing powerlifting? Are you doing weightlifting? You're doing bodybuilding? You're doing football?
Right.
You need a word.
Yeah. So that just felt really weird to me. And then that kind of carried on until the pandemic, when the pandemic started, and throughout those years. And then coming out of the pandemic, I had been following, Strong Fit for some time, and then kind of really committed to it. Did one of their templates, 16 weeks. And that really just kind of set me off, right? Where it's like, oh, right, this is like the base of everything, right? Understanding movement patterns. And when I say that, I'm kind of going off of your definition, right? Which is almost like the function of the joints or the muscles, right? And then after doing those 16 weeks, you kind of relearn how to perform exercises, right? You relearn how to squat, deadlift with a barbell, but you're applying the muscles that you developed and the patterns that you developed with the bag, the sled, or with the bicep curls, right? And now I I feel like I can kind of float through different things and know how to apply myself to those things, right? As an example, I finished that template and kind of went on my own training, and encompassed a lot of different things where it was, a day would focus on that movement pattern where it's like, okay, we're focusing on the hips today. Like, what can we do? It's like, all right, well, you have the deadlift, you have the squat. What variations of that movement can we do? What muscles are involved? And you do that, and you mix in some steady state cardio, and you feel pretty, or in my experience, right, I felt pretty good. And when it came time for the CrossFit Open, it just felt like, I'm just having fun. I'm just, applying everything that I've been working into this environment, and you no longer feel like you're just going through the motion, or you no longer feel like stressed out in that workout, just like constantly looking for a way out, like you usually do in a CrossFit session. You just feel like you're ready for it, like you're prepared. So I really, from personal experience, identify with that kind of flow where it's like, okay, what's the function here, right? Why do we have a bicep? What does a bicep do? And what does it do in like other movements? And how do you apply it? So,
yeah, and I think that gap that needs to be bridged still is there's an anatomical function, meaning you're pressing on a dead muscle, on a dead body, and then the joint does something. Like for the pec example, like, because in the books, the pec is an internal rotator of the shoulder, right? Which is true. When you just lay down and press it, your shoulder turns inwards. When you squeeze it like a pec stick, shoulder rotate outwards to the outside, but your pec is on like Donkey Kong, right? So there's obviously a difference between quote unquote dead muscles and movement, and I think that's what we need to bridge and be like, okay, that might be true from a textbook standpoint, but in movement it's totally different. And as you said before, it's funny that like two main joints in the body can move in certain directions or in multiple directions, right? It's the shoulder and the hips, right? Let's exclude the spine for a second here, because so there's got to be something to it, right? And we haven't talked about the difference between pressing overhead and pressing like vertically and horizontally, but pulling vertically and horizontally. So I think us as coaches, we can start just coaching movement differently in a very structured way, but including muscles in there, and I think that's the easing feeling you feel in workouts, and CrossFit workouts, is you have taken over control over your body, which means, okay, I need to do whatever. Let's take an example. I have to do kettlebell swings and my lower back is flaring up, right? When that happens in a CrossFit workout, you're screwed. Right? Because your mind is gonna shut off and be like, okay, dude, that's happening every single time. And that performance is gonna drop immediately because your body wants to protect you, or your system wants to protect you, right? But once you learn, okay, I'm feeling my lower back because I'm doing 1,500 kettlebell swings, that's awesome. Okay, what should fire? Like my glutes, my inside hamstring, etc. And I can start working on that and reminding myself, okay, this is how I should feel. Why am I not feeling it while doing kettlebell swings? So you have it like an exit strategy, like a solution that's going to be performed by you. You don't have to ask anybody. It's like, dude, my back flares up. It's like, okay, keep it straighter or grip hard or whatever. It's like, no, you have a solution. And I think that's why that's where that ease comes in workout. I mean, it's still exhausting, don't get me wrong. But you are providing an active solution to a problem.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like that is the super challenging part in the coach's role, because you are trying to give someone autonomy, right? Like you are trying to have them be the the captain of their own ship, right? Where it's like, they say, I feel my lower back on deadlifts, right? A quick response is, don't feel your lower back, feel your hamstring, right?
But what does that mean?
Right, exactly. What does that mean? And there are ways for that person to feel their hamstring and then apply those muscles to that exercise. But that's just a hard principle for folks to grasp, and I don't know. What I've realized is that it takes more time than you think for people to really get comfortable with being their own captain, being their own leader, right? Like, to give an example, I was working with a client of mine. We had done about 12 one-on-one sessions together, and in these sessions she would come in and just come in and want to like work out and get out, right? And that was it, just that hour. It wouldn't really go outside into her daily life. And so we did those 12 sessions and she took a break. Work got crazy, life got crazy. And she came back about after the pandemic. She came back and she told me, she's like, I need to change, She's like, I need to commit to this. I need to do something seriously. Like, I saw this total shift in her mindset. And from there, we're going on about another year. And now we're doing about 1 to 2 sessions a week together. And she works out on her own. She has a Peloton and some dumbbells and stuff. But she has created a new lifestyle for herself, which to me, and I tell her, is like, that's the biggest PR. Like, no matter what output you do on this Peloton, you have been able to look at free time in your day and say, I'm going to stretch, or I'm going to hop on the bike and I'm going to do this, right? But that's, it's taken about a year or 2 for her to like really develop this change. So I think, as a coach, it's important to realize this timeline, but it's even more important for the client to realize that that's the goal, where it's like, I don't want you just coming in to my class mindlessly going through it. Like, I want you to know what you're doing, right? I want you to know what you're looking for and like know yourself. And I'm here to help you, right? And give you ideas and kind of guide the process. But like, you're the one in control. And that's where like real performance and real progress happens, is when folks take command of themselves.
I mean, we got to put that into perspective, because stuff that you're doing and the way you're coaching obviously is so different than a lot of people are doing out there. So I mean, that whole attitude, that whole view on what training is, like, for most people it's okay, I gotta do this like twice a week, 3 times a week. I'm not really enjoying it. It's like, I check a box. It's okay, I gotta burn some calories so I can eat a cookie afterwards, whatever it is. Like that. But that's partially on us, on the fitness world, on the coaches world, because we created this, right? We created that. Okay, when you jump in 3 times a week for 6 weeks, you're going to lose 7 pounds and 3% body fat, or whatever it is. Like, that's on us. We've told that people, like, that's what training should look like, and now they're doing it, right?
It's like the 80s,
It's like what?
I said since like the 80s. So you're looking at like 20, 30 years of that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, a little historical view on it, like, literally bodybuilding in like the 60s, 70s started everything, right? Like Gold's Gym, and coming from California and all that stuff. So it was like, I'm not saying doing a lot of mindless stuff, but at the end of the day, it was a lot of mindless stuff, and a whole change in like body composition. And it was actually on vogue to look like athletic as a guy back then, not as a girl. But that was kind of how it started, like bodybuilding, good looking, like being in shape, just doing something. And it was a sign of wealth back then, right? Not everybody could afford to just train, because most people had to work, like physically had to work.
Right.
So that's been created for what, like, was that 50, 60 years maybe?
Yeah.
And that's where everything just is being based on, whether it's Gold's Gym, so literally like the first facility where people gathered together and trained more or less together, or just sitting on machines. And that's that's gonna just take a lot of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think CrossFit has done an awesome job of just interrupting that downward spiral, in terms of you only train for the looks, you only train for ABCD, you can actually talk to people, like it's enticing to go to a gym, and the side effects are awesome, like I look better and I feel better.
Right.
That takes time, that takes a lot of time, and that's just how people view it. And I don't mind somebody coming in with that mindset, because it's normal. That doesn't mean I wanna help that person change that over, as you said, a year, 2, maybe 3. Like, some people are never going to change. Like, that's not on you. Like, that needs to be taken from that person. Like, you can't do that for them, obviously. But I'm happy if I do like the first 10 sessions of just good strength and conditioning work, activating a couple of muscles, and person feels better. Like, that's huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I totally feel you on, I want to do it now and every single muscle in one session. But actually, it's going to take time.
Yeah, definitely. And, in line with, I think now, especially, we're starting to kind of redefine what fitness means, and what exactly we're training for. Um, and it's pretty cool to see, but it's at the same time frustrating, because people come in with that mentality of, I want bigger biceps. And it's like, okay, well, how are you sleeping? And then they're like, I could give a shit about how I'm sleeping. I just want bigger biceps. And it's like, well, like, I understand that, but we have to look at you as a person, and, like, address all of these things. And, um, touching on the nervous system and the breathing, and, just health and wellness in general. Um, it's cool to see the message from coaches and all these top players in the fitness industry switch to that. But frustrating, because we still have that archaic mindset, and even the mindset that CrossFit has developed, right? Like, CrossFit has evolved into this interesting mentality and personality. It's still effective, could be effective, but it's kind of developed this, like, toxic focus on performance, right? So you have this kind of gen pop person come in, and they care so much about how much they're snatching. It's like, dude, you're not going to go to the Olympics, so why are you, like, so set on snatching X amount? But they're just they think that defines how fit they are or how strong they are. So it's really interesting to see this kind of shift. And, I think you're so right when you said that CrossFit kind of disrupted that older bodybuilding mindset, but then they kind of caused this shift to the opposite side, the opposite extreme, where now CrossFitters are afraid to do bicep curls or lateral raises. So I think now the focus is going, and should be going, to, like, a well-rounded idea of, like, this all-encompassing thing of, like, breath and bodybuilding and powerlifting and all that stuff.
I think CrossFit is a very good example because for Europe, I was an OG because I started like 15 years ago. There was like one gym in Austria, which was literally like a basement with one barbell and two kettlebells and maybe a pull-up rig, and that was it. But I think that's a natural evolution. And yes, you as a company could they could have done way more of explaining the difference between sport and training and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to see that. But I'll like you can't blame all on CrossFit, right? Because once such a movement starts literally as an open source methodology, which CrossFit 100% was in the beginning. Like you got powerlifters, you got runners, you got self-defense, you got bodybuilders in, I don't know, bodybuilders in there, but you got cardio guys. You had like from every single aspect of training and sports, you had somebody in there contributing, right?
Yeah.
Basic CrossFit programming, which was literally like 5x5 deadlifts. That was it. That was Monday.
Yeah.
And Tuesday was four times 400 meters. Right? That was it. That was no A, B, C, D, E, F, G programming. Like that was it. Like it was like constantly varied, high intensity functional movements. That was it. And I would still sign up for that every single day, right? So it like we made that, like businesses made that decision of following the sport aspect. Like use it. I, as a CrossFit gym, could have said at that point, I'm not going in a sport direction. I'm going to stick with the training aspect of it, right? But that would have been a hard decision because you're not working against your own business, because everybody's coming in and paying a lot of money and they want to do the CrossFit Open workouts and they want to do the snatching and then I want to do this. So yes, you can blame CrossFit for a lot of stuff, but it was also on us business owners. We could have made different decisions back then.
Right.
And I personally made that decision and it cost me a lot of money, it cost me a lot of members, cost me a lot of time. But 5 years later, it was worth it. But in that moment when I decided, no, I'm not going to train people like for the sport of CrossFit. I want to make people healthier and get them healthier shoulders, etc. So I'm not that easy convinced that it's all to blame on CrossFit. Like it's still the people executing it, the businesses that are offering it, and it's tempting. Right? If you just put CrossFit on your billing and 100 people show up paying $250 a month, like
that sounds good, right?
Nobody says no as a businessman, right? Yeah. I want to go back to your because I have a little bit of different opinion on your I don't know if it's an actual client, the biceps client who just comes in and says, okay, I want to have bigger guns, right? I think there's a portion on us coaches saying, okay, I got to earn my merits with that person as well.
Yeah.
That means I got to earn the trust of that person, and whatever that person wants from me, as long as it's not illegal and as long as I'm not going to kill a person, I'm going to give my best effort to prove that I can make it happen. And if it's a bigger biceps in 6 weeks, I'll do a bigger biceps in 6 weeks.
Right.
Right. And that person will realize, okay, in 6 weeks, my biceps grew, I don't know, an inch, 2, 4, 5, whatever. So that guy, like, he's capable of doing stuff. Like, what else has he got in his pockets? So I think there's that side too, if you know what I mean. There's that side too of like you gotta prove that you're a good coach, and sprinkle it in. I mean, you can train biceps for 60 minutes, right? So okay, give the person 50 minutes, 15 minutes of what they want, which is just totally fucking destroy the biceps and everything around it. People are happy. It's like, okay, let's do something else. And it's like, okay, I can't move my arms anyways, so let's do something else.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there's that side to that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, that's something that I've been working on my end over the past year or so, that you know, you have all these contradicting ideas in the fitness world that if someone comes to you with the biceps, you want to like essentially shut them down and do something else because you think it's better, right? But realizing
I'm sorry, but who are you to decide that?
Right, exactly. Like you have to give them what they want, you know, where it's like, okay, you came to me for the biceps, yeah, let's work on that, right? And then like you said, that you get their trust, so then you can sprinkle it's you know, one drop at a time, or maybe you introduce a breathing strategy during bicep curls that they're like, oh, actually, you know what? This helps. It's like, perfect. Let's talk about breathing in your day-to-day life, right? You can find a way to just add these messages over time, and then you have this compounded effect, as opposed to trying to throw it all at them without addressing their original goal or their needs. So that's a shift that I've had to make over the past year or so, and that's, not kind of going overboard with this new information. That you disregard the client's original needs.
Because for us, it's so natural, right? Like being in a gym, being in the surroundings, being like exposed to weights, sandbags, sleds, barbells, etc. Like that's so natural for us, right? But just look back at yourself. Like, I'm not saying you stressed out about calling me and not figuring out how to do an international call, right? But it's like, no, but that's a change. Like, what the fuck am I doing? I've never called somebody in Europe. Like, how the fuck am I going to do this? So this took you whatever, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 2 minutes, 5 seconds, doesn't matter. But like, change is going to stress you for sure, right? But now now you figured it out, and now you feel comfortable of doing more international calls. And that's the same strategy I think we have to apply to every single client. Like, I don't care what your goal is. Like, I'll do it with you and for you sometimes. Whether it's powerlifting or you want to get a split, it's like awesome. Like I'm in. I'll do it with you. And let's give a percentage shit. They come in and they have like 0% change in them, right? Zero. Like, they just want to do their stuff. And like 4 weeks later, when you earned their trust, they're like 0.5%, right? And then 4 weeks later, they're at 1%, and then they're at 2%, and then they're at 3%. And the more they gain, or you gain their trust, like their capacity of doing something quote unquote new in a session with you increases tremendously. And 2 years in, 1 year in, 5 years in, I don't know, depending on the person, they won't even realize they're doing so much new shit.
Yeah.
Right. And that's so human. Like, that's, but you gotta be fascinated at first. Like, you gotta be like, I want to train with Jacob. He's awesome. My biceps grew. And yeah, we're doing that breathing stuff. Like, I don't believe in it. It's not working, but I'm just doing it because my biceps grew. Right.
Yeah.
And maybe for 1 out of 10, they will realize, okay, this is fucking awesome. I'm going to use it for my daily life. And maybe 9 out of 10 won't. And I think we can discuss the ratio here, but I think that's normal. Do we want to have 10 out of 10? Oh, fuck yeah. We're coaches. Like, we want to make everybody healthier. But again, it's that that decision is not on you exclusively.
Yeah.
Which shouldn't mean you shouldn't talk about it or present it or try to incorporate that. But maybe some people are not giving you the time, which is fine. But they're gonna come back to you, maybe like the lady with the Peloton and the dumbbells during the pandemic, and they're gonna come back to you 2 years later, and you don't even know why.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of moving parts to it, and I think it changes depending on the person. Like, for some people, you have to go along with what they originally come to you for in order, right, to build that rapport and to build that trust, so that way they come back to you, right? Or that way you can implement some new stuff into that will impact their health and wellness for the better. And then I think there are some people where the environment that you provide them is what's important to them.
Yeah.
So, like, how were you as a person with them? Did you listen to what they were saying? Did you provide them a sort of outlet? And then that gains their trust. And then they're like, you know what? I'm going to come back to you because I just like talking to you. And like, I know we can figure this out, kind of thing. So I think knowing how to play into the person that's in front of you definitely plays a role in that, because fitness is so so complicated, to a certain degree where
Can
like,
be. Yep.
yeah, or I should say also like coaching, because I think a lot of people think that coaching is just standing here telling someone how to do something. But coaching is also like conversational, where it's like, can you carry a conversation? Can you ask important questions? Can you repeat what the person said to you back to them? Right. So there's this there's this conversational piece, psychological piece, as well as the technical side where it's like, okay, can you teach them how to do a movement? Can you talk to them about how these muscles function? Um, and that kind of all plays into, if a person changes or if they come back to you. So I think
that's a huge part of coaching. I mean, you've been working for a couple of years now. This is huge. Like having different layers to your principles, to your approach, whether you're talking to like, you got to talk differently to a lawyer, not change your principles, but talk differently, right? Or very straightforward, I don't know, like a businessman, for example, rather than having like a lady who just wants to work out twice a week, which is totally fine, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's such an overlooked part, because for me, there's like roughly two groups of coaches. There's one, like the managers, and there's the thinkers, right?
Mhm.
So the managers love structure, and they structure everything, and they have the programming set for the one-on-one, for the group class. Like they have it timed, like from minute 5, I'll do this, and this is the question, and this is the plan, and this is what you're gonna eat, and this is what you're gonna do, which is awesome to a certain degree. And then there's the thinkers. There's like overthinking everything, like I need 60 minutes to explain how to engage the inside hamstring.
Yeah.
I need to explain the whole nervous system and how it works in the first 5 sessions.
Before we
Right?
do anything else.
Exactly. Like if you breathe that way, that's going to trigger that part of your nervous system, which is going to lead
Yeah.
to this. And they're like, I'm just here to do 5 squats and lose some weight. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying don't do this. This is like fucking very, very important. But I think the timeline to it is tremendously important. Tremendously important. You can literally lose people. I'm not talking about the money. You're losing people, like you're losing the chance of educating that person. And somebody just takes more time. Somebody just wants to train, and 3 years in, they're like, Jacob, you told me about that nervous system thing like 3 years ago. Like I've read something. What do you think?
Mhm.
Right? Because I think that's what the learning experience is. Like that's how I want to learn. Like I want to figure out stuff. I don't work well on somebody telling me this is how I should do a squat. This is not how I work. Right?
Mhm.
Maybe a portion of it, right? To get the basics and the principles right. But I want to figure that shit out. Like if you tell me this is how you squat, it's like, okay, maybe, but give me 3 years and I'll figure it out on my own. And that's how I learn. And there's different types of learners out there, but I think that the timeline and that perspective is so important. And I'm still in that same boat. Like I want to fix a person in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Everything, shoulder, hips, the heart, the body fat percentage, like everything in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. So I've done this thousands of times.
Yeah. And I think um, something important from what you're saying is also like setting your expectations as a coach, where it's like, okay, I'm going to talk about this super complicated breathing thing or nervous system thing, and to be honest, I don't think anyone is going to fully understand what I'm saying right now. But if I've planted the idea of this, the curiosity of this, that's what's important, because then this person's going to come back to you, right?
100%.
2 weeks, month later, and be like, you were talking about this, or I know that you focus on this. Can you explain that a little bit more? Or
Yeah.
like, share with me how this applies to what I'm doing, or like how we can improve. That curiosity is what is more important in the client's journey, I think, for
Yeah.
sure.
And I think as a coach, you have to have like certain magic tricks up your sleeve, right? For example, like if you're talking about whatever, abs and core muscles, whatever, you can talk like all day long about eccentric, concentric, and this is more time and attention, less time and attention, that torque chain, that torque chain. But if you put somebody in a GHD, right, in your prone positions or their trunk gets fired up, like you explain them nothing, you just put them in there and they're gonna hold it for, I don't know, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, then you start shaking and freaking out and everything. And you'll be like, all right, let me tell you one thing. The only thing you're going to do is you're going to squeeze your hands together, right? So you feel your pecs and you're going to inhale through your nose. That's all you're going to change. People are going to double their time in that position. They'll be like, whoa, 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 what's happening right here?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, now we can have a conversation about stuff. So maybe it's not only about doing more sit-ups or doing weighted sit-ups or whatever the fuck the fitness world is telling you. Yeah. Maybe there's different layers to it, right? And we're not gonna fully we're not gonna make a full disclosure today, but it's a start. So people are like, what the fuck? Like I've doubled my performance. I've physically doubled my performance in that GHD hold within 10 seconds. This is not possible, right? So I think and the more like magic tricks you have up your sleeve, people are like, what the hell is going on? Or their shoulder hurts when going up and you do certain stuff and activate the pec and do your press and like my shoulder's not hurting. Yeah, that's not a permanent fix. We both know this, but it's a start. Like you have a foot in the door, they're enticed, they love coming back, and it's like, okay, tell me more about it. Like, why is that working? And then, I mean, then the grind starts, the actual work starts.
Right.
But I mean, you gotta have a good sales pitch up your sleeve. If somebody walks in the door and is like, okay, Jacob, I need ABCD.
Yeah, definitely how you phrase it and how you go about it is the most important thing. Like I was actually just thinking about sales the other day, because I have a part-time retail sales job. And I'm watching one of our salesmen like interact over the phone and with these customers, and I'm like, man, sales is so funny because it's like either super scummy and like just like gross, or it's just like super effective. And I think what it comes down to is knowing that you are going to make a difference with what you say or with what you sell, and it's that makes the message and the timing and everything so much more appropriate and powerful, where like, look, we're gonna make this change and we're gonna introduce this because I know it's gonna work for you. And then the person is more receptive to it because you believe in it, right? And you have found a way to apply it in their journey. So yeah, that's where the job of the coach is to, I guess, learn how to sell or something.
I mean, we as coaches, we should be the funnel. We should be like the little part in between all the information that's out there about nutrition, about training, how to lose weight, gain weight, whatever, sleeping better, which supplements to use. We should be that funnel. Be like, okay, that's all the information coming in, and I'm gonna prepare it for you, my little one-on-one client or my group. So we have like certain stepstones to go with, right?
Yeah.
Like that's literally our job, because there's so much information out there. There's so much information in my head. Like I'm always joking, like you should have like the knowledge of theoretical physicist, but applied it as a plumber.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, you should have all the knowledge in the world, but it doesn't make any difference if you can explain what you're doing to a 5-year-old. That doesn't make any sense. Right. And for us, I think that means having just those small magic tricks up your sleeve and to kind of fascinate people, like right from the get-go, but explain them also like, this is not okay. I can make this happen in 5 seconds so your shoulder doesn't hurt anymore. But now it starts to grind. This is like 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years of work. But I mean, and it's a good sales pitch. Like everybody's benefiting from it.
Right.
You're offering good work. the client gets a solution, and like it's just more appealing for them to join the sessions.
Yeah.
It's like looking forward to like a great class in school, if that ever happened. Didn't happen to me. But you know what I mean? Like you're looking forward to, like, I don't know, playing sports or going to your football training, or I don't know, if you have a great math teacher, like, okay, that's just fucking interesting. Like I'm not there to learn. It's just naturally happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like it's so, the parallels are so interesting, right? Because you're saying, you have, it's something to look forward to, like a class to look forward to, or a sporting practice to look forward to. And each one of those roles is different, right? Like you have a teacher, you have a coach, or you have the salesperson, but there's this parallel of like just I guess leading people, or causing this level of curiosity, right? Because when I look back and I think of, the great coaches that I've experienced, they've sparked curiosity, right? They've kind of shared uh, enough that I could handle,
Yeah.
where I was like, oh, interesting, let me look at the different muscles in the body, right? Oh, they have functions, and each function is that, oh, they're powered by nerves. Oh, nerves are right. There's like this kind of domino effect. Or a professor in college, all the best ones were uh, sparked curiosity or sparked discussion. Um, and I think the same goes for a salesperson, where it's, you spark curiosity in what you're selling or your product. It's like, um, that the person wants to learn more and wants to be involved. Um, this overlying purpose, I think, is what we can call it. As a coach, as a teacher, as a sales rep, or whatever, you have to have like this kind of purpose behind every sentence or message you have.
100%. So I think, at least for me, that's my goal, and I'm going to start with me and my coaches and my gym and maybe some other coaches, and through workshops, etc. Is like changing that perception of how training should be, how training should feel, what training is for, just little by little. Like it's a huge industry. I'm not gonna compete against big global gyms whatsoever, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Seriously, it doesn't matter. But I think it's necessary, and apparently, like we talked about CrossFit, like it started as a great thing, a very small community, like an actual community. It's as a whole, it's not a community anymore. Like it's dogmatic. I mean, people are dressing like the same. Everybody's wearing the same shoes. No offense. Like I love it. Like I love CrossFit to death, right? And I've done it, and it's awesome. But I mean, you gotta like analyze it strategically and be like, okay, this is what's happening, and this is why it's happening. I think it's normal because it's humans involved, and once it grows bigger, like that's what naturally happens, and money gets involved, and business are being run. So I think that's what naturally happens if you don't work. Not against it, but if you don't offer something else, right? And as soon as like an industry or a movement like gets overboard, or just kind of that goes down, but people are realizing that this is maybe not the best way to train for regular people, right? Something new is going to evolve, and I think that's just the way it is. And for us, it's our responsibility to offer a new product, a new service, a better solution, not bitch about it, but offer a better solution, and learn what was good, learn what was bad, and just try to improve it and help more people out there.
Yeah, definitely. It's this like collaborative effort that I think is starting to pick up more and more in the fitness world, where you kind of decentralize these ideas and these methods, and just kind of give them to everyone, right? Other coaches, other spaces. Like one thing that I've loved seeing on Instagram, whether or not this was just like a marketing ploy or what, but I don't know if you're familiar with like knees over toes guys on Instagram. He was like, he shares like a specific, his whole thing is like bulletproofing knees. But he went out and he did all these different video series with all these different professionals. Like he went to WEC Method. He did a video with WEC Method. He did a video with Huberman Lab, and like all these different professionals in these different areas that talk about different things, but they're all coming together to share their message. And I think that is so much more powerful, right? Because you have all these different minds coming together and collaborating, versus something like CrossFit. They don't really collaborate outside of their inner circle, and this kind of centralized figure. Again, not a bad thing, because I'm not saying CrossFit is a bad thing, because they get people in, right? And then it's like we've been saying, it's the person's job to either kind of stay there or start to look outward of that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking to Jim on the podcast for a couple of weeks. It always comes down to, okay, what's a practical thing that we can add to a CrossFit gym? My son just came in the room. What's a practical thing that you could do like tomorrow to make your gym better, right? Because I get it. Like, you run a business, you got to pay the bills. Like, there's people coming in. You can change like from A to Z in like 5 minutes. So I told him, okay, give me 3 minutes of every session. That's all I'm asking for. And I'm going to send you the find, stress, use principle. And I'm going to show you like, this is how you're going to coach that muscle in that movement pattern for that exercise, whatever the workout is. Maybe it's a deadlift workout, a deadlift, wall ball, shot, running workout, right? Give me 3 minutes, do that stuff, activate, it's called the glute max, implement it in that movement pattern. This is how you coach it, and that's it. And then you run the same thing, right? You're going to help people. Same with the biceps guy. Okay, give me 3 minutes of your 60 minutes, like a very small fraction. And once you start realizing as a gym owner, like, people feel their ass. That's great. Feel the glutes. They PR the deadlift. It's like those are performance markers that you as a gym owner want to improve. Like, we're on the same page. Like, I want your people to deadlift more weight. We're on the same page, right? Maybe I have a different approach. Give me 5 minutes and your people will feel better. Like, talk about retention, talk about making more money. This is all good. We're on the same page. I just want to add a little bit to it. And you don't have to change your programming. All you need to do is get educated on some stuff that we can provide to give a little bit of a different structure to the class. That's it.
Yeah, definitely. And, it really is these small things that you can change, whether it's just in the warm up, or maybe it's, a 3-minute finisher, 5-minute finisher. Maybe it's this one breathing strategy that you keep throughout the whole session, that will make a change.
And again, like, prove it. Like I have to prove it. If I do a deadlift workshop, we'll do a proper warm up. We'll deadlift a 3-rep max. Not a huge explaining, like, people do 3 deadlift and this is what you focus on, and still coach them. And then, okay, now you've done your weights. This is your 3-rep max. It's 100 kilos. And now we're going to run through one series of find, stress, use for the glutes. All right. Then we're going to do an exercise. Cool. Then we're going to do this, the next muscle. And an hour, 90 minutes later, like, all the muscles, quote unquote, all the muscles are engaged. People have a feeling of how they should feel. Now we're going to deadlift again. And like 90% of people PR a deadlift. Like, that's all I'm asking for. Like, I have to prove that this is improving your deadlift. And I'm not just talking about it. We're going to do it. You're going to move more weight. You're going to feel better. Like, everybody wins. everybody wins. Yes, it needs a little bit of change for the gym owner, for the coach, but that is life. But you can help that person get a bigger deadlift. You can help that person get healthier in the same process, right? And it's not any, like, it's not a theoretical concept. It's not, okay, do these 3 warm-up exercises, A, B, C, D.
Right.
And that's how we convince, quote unquote, gym owners and coaches.
Yeah.
That's it. You can improve the deadlift of your client doing these things. And again, this is probably like the first 12, 24 months of your coaching experience. I'm not saying you should stay there, right? As we talked before, the technical and the artistic approach to coaching, to movement, etc. This is a very technical approach, but I think it's the base of whatever comes next. Yeah, you can get super creative a year in, or 6 months in, or 18 months in. But at first, you have to learn the craft, which is, those are the muscles being engaged, should be engaged. Those are the general movement patterns. This is how you combine them. And this is how you coach that going to whatever, a compound movement, or it's a deadlift or a squat. And that's the reason for it. There's a muscle, there's 1 torque chain for the movement pattern, and then there's 2 torque chains for exercises. Right? So we can start educating coaches. We can do courses with coaches. Like, this is what you're going to do. Are there better exercises than mine for activating certain muscles? 100%. But you got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere, very practically speaking. And 6 months later, 12 months later, once you did that, you can go all out in the weeds and do whatever you want.
Yeah. And the foundation that you touch on is so important for the coach and for the member, really for anything that you're doing, right? It's just start somewhere. Like, if someone's starting fitness, all we care about, or from my lens, is consistency. Like, first, let's build consistency, whether it's doing classes or hopping on the Peloton or the rower. Like, just get consistent with it, right? 3 to 5 times a week. Just try to hit that for a month. All right, cool. You built that habit. Great. Let's add to it, right? So you're consistent. Now let's get a little bit more specific, right? How do we want to row? Let's have varying intensity. Get consistent with that. Perfect. Let's add some core work to that, right? So you kind of build on those baby steps. And same thing with coaching, right? Is just get consistent with it, right? Consistent attitude when you coach a class, right? Consistent with cueing, with the knowledge base that you currently have, whether that's, you just finished your L1, so all you have is what CrossFit taught you. So get consistent with that, and then, right, build on it. Don't stay there. Look for the next step, right? And a lot of times that's looking at what other people are involved in. So whether that next step is breathing or strength training or whatever, right? You have to build on that. And I think that's such a key point for really anything, right? Yeah. Whether you're a participant in fitness or it's your career, you have to get consistent and, like, always come back to that foundation and then build from there. It's almost like one of those diagrams where there's the center circle and then you kind of branch out from there. So you always come back to the center circle and then you just keep going in different directions and kind of add to that base.
Yeah. So exactly. So in that sense, I appreciate the effort from CrossFit of defining fitness, educating coaches strategically and structured, right? I've done the L1, I think, twice, because you had to renew it after like 5 years or so. It's very structured. I love it, right? Yeah. Am I happy with everything that's being taught there? Kind of. I would add to it, right? Because that deterministic approach of joints move muscles rather than muscles move joints, like, that's just so common, whether it's in the physio, medical, and CrossFit world. It's like that switch. That's the thing that we should add to, and how to do that, and how to structure that, and how to get people on board. And then they could just, I'm not saying plug and play, but you know what I mean, the get some technical base for it, and then do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. You need muscles engaged at a certain level, at a certain movement, with a certain sport, whether you like it or not, whether you're into assistance work or not, I don't care. You'll need it. The only thing that matters is, can we make your sport, your movement, your shoulder better? That's the only thing I care about. And I think that's something we can all agree on, whether we disagree on certain exercises for activating stuff, whether we disagree on certain coaching styles. But I think every coach, every person in the health and fitness industry, I think we can agree on that. And then let's just discuss what could be good options. Like have a discussion about it, have a good open conversation about it. I'm 100% wrong on a lot of stuff that I'm telling on this podcast, but maybe one or two is like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, not being scared of that is so important. Like, that's why I appreciate so much about folks who do podcasts like yourself, is like, I'm just going to get on here. I'm just going to talk. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. Might be right, might be wrong, might be good, might be bad, but I'm just going to do it. Right. And then it's up to the recipient of my words to interpret whether it's right for them, wrong for them, good for them, bad for them. Because that's how ideas build, right? That's how you get the ball rolling, where it's, maybe it's a bad idea at first. Maybe it's like, really bad, but
Jacob, it doesn't matter if it's a good or a bad idea. Just the process of talking about it, and that's what I want to achieve with that podcast. It's just a little platform of just having open conversations, disagreeing, agreeing on stuff that we all love doing, which is coaching and training and just moving weights around and making people better, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's not many options out there yet, at least in my perception, where you can just say whatever you want, whether it's like brutally wrong. I'm gonna try it out, and if it works better than my approach or my inside hamstring activation, fuck yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm not stupid. Like, I stole an exercise from you. I think I saw it on your Instagram. The one with the PVC pipe where you push against the.
Yeah,
it's awesome, man. Right? And I love that idea so much. So I spent like literally a week on, okay, so how can I implement it into like a hollow hold? So we're using 2 of those PVC pipes now, right? And there's like, we can do like, there's so many variations to it, like, and I like the principle because it's right. The principle is right. And it was not my idea. It was yours, or maybe not even yours. Doesn't matter, right? But it helped me stepping up my coaching game, which is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I think it's important is that there's ownership, right? But doesn't mean that it's not shareable. Like, just because I did an exercise based on these certain kinds of ideas doesn't mean that it's mine and mine only, right? Like, it's everyone's. It helped me, and it's going to help so many others. So like, do it, right? And in line with that, it's an exercise that it's easy to gain trust with, because you feel it instantly, right? Like, it's something that can be scalable in any direction, right? You can make it harder, you can make it easier, and it's doable on all sides of it. But I think it's important for the reason why you're doing this podcast is open conversations, right? It's important for you to be open in receiving whatever it is that comes your way, and trying to make it your own, right? And be open to sharing and people using your stuff, because that's how you change the world, right? That's how you change people's fitness. That's how you change lives.
I truly believe in that. And you said decentralizing, whatever you want to call it, is, I think everybody has a strength, right? Somebody is very good at inventing exercises. Somebody's very good at seeing patterns. Somebody else is just good at finding common ground in different areas. Like, and we got to play out those strengths. And I have a certain strength, and my mine is for sure not like organizing stuff. Like that's just not stuff that I like doing. But I probably have my like certain strengths in me, and that's what I want to provide. And maybe yours, and maybe your like main focus clients are totally different than mine, right? Which is fine, but we can still use the same principles because everybody that we want to attract, like they want to train because that's our profession, right? And your expression of training and your coaching, your personality can be totally different. Like you can go way into like, I don't know, maybe more nervous system or more into certain sport, but the principles that we should be teaching should be all the same, right? And I think that's only achievable through open conversation with disagreeing with each other a lot, like way more than we used to do, or that we used to provide to other people.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like that doesn't mean just because I disagree with you on a hamstring activation exercise doesn't mean like we don't like each other. What the heck? Like we just have a different opinion on some stuff, and then we'll move on. And maybe you'll try mine, and I'll try yours. And 3 weeks later, I'll text you and be like, "I think Jacob, you're right."
Yeah.
I wish I would have figured that out.
And to your point, both exercises are hamstring activation, and but maybe yours would work better with some folks than mine would. Maybe mine works better with other folks, right? I think like you're saying, it's the principle that matters, right? It's let's get those hamstrings on. And for some folks it's exercise A, and for some folks it's exercise B. But having these options is what matters, because you're providing options to the population, right? Because not everyone is the same. So just because, let's say, you like deadlifting with standard 45-pound barbell, right? That doesn't work for me. So I like deadlifting with axle bar, right? But they're both a deadlift. They both serve the same function. It's just I prefer doing it with this, and that's okay, right? So it's that openness of keeping the principle and the foundation, and just playing around with it from there and adjusting it to what you find comfortable.
What I've just seen, and I think you got to go to the gym, right? We're an hour and 50 minutes in.
I'm okay. I'm just chilling.
Okay, cool, awesome. I think that there needs to be a certain structure still, even for that openness, right? Because otherwise you just get lost in that. And you mentioned it earlier, like in that there's so much to learn, there's so much to do, there's so much layers to coaching, there's so many exercises, so many muscles. Like you gotta, when you learn something new, you need something you can hold on to, right?
Right.
And for me, this is, okay, I'm going to provide coaches like those 3 exercises for inside hamstring activation. And the process of find that muscle, implement it in a movement pattern, and then try to execute it in an actual exercise. Find stress use. That's all I'm going to do. And I'm not saying this is going to solve 100% of the problems. I'm not saying this is all you should be doing, but let's start there, because otherwise you won't do shit, because that's what happens a lot. You think about the 7th exercise for the inside hamstring, but you haven't done the first 3 more than once, right? And I've seen this time and time again. So there needs to be a good balance between you being forced to do some certain stuff, try mine and see how it works, and do it in that process, and do it with that coaching, and I'll explain it to you, and this is how you're going to do the workshop. This is how you're going to make your people better. And once you make your people better, so you're going to PR the deadlift or whatever, it's like, I earned your trust, right? And if you want to move further, that means like broaden your toolkit for inside hamstring activation, whatever. All right, do it. But you got to do the grind and the hard work first, and then you can get artsy about it.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
This isn't the only approach that should be out there, but I'm feeling, and this is what we're doing in the workshops, I'm feeling this is the one that's being needed the most at the moment. This is just my perception.
Definitely. It's kind of like, the whole idea of tension over position, right? We all know that it's more important, or the tension that's being applied to the exercise is more important than the actual position of the exercise, right? But people start by knowing the position of the exercise, right? So it's like a paradox where you have to, right? Coaching is an art, but you have to know the technical side of it before you can know the artsy side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes with everything is you have to have both sides of the coin, right? Where you start here and then you make your way here, which makes this so much better, right?
Yeah. And my job as a coach or mentor for another coach is, okay, what do you need at the moment? Are you like totally out in the weeds and already figuring out what, if I activate that muscle, what does it mean to my nervous system? Okay, I gotta bring you back to the other side as well, right? You don't know how to squat. That's a problem when you think about, no, I'm dead serious. Like I've seen those people, but it's vice versa on the other side. Like, okay, you're structured and fully managed and you know everything about the squad, etc. But you're not like figuring out something new, right? This should be, or this at least how I see my role as a coach or a mentor or educator or whatever, a teacher is, okay, where are you? Where do you want to be? And how can we bridge that gap? And it's not going to feel good, but we talked about change before. And then you need some guidance, but not like words. Words are great, but people learn differently. Some learn through words, some learn through reading, some learn through shadowing, some learn through watching, right? And we got to provide all those different aspects because I don't know how you want to learn. And probably you don't know either.
Yeah. And I think, you said something important there, right? Everyone learns differently, but like as a coach, mentor, like to me, I think talking less is so important, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the person learns by reading, be like, okay, here's this book, right? Like, go for it. And then let them come to you with like, whoa, I just found this principle in this book. Like, what do you think about that? Or this is how I see it. This is how I can apply it. And you're like, that's great. And that's, this is how I did it. Now go do it, right? Or if they learn by shadowing, let your actions teach them something, right? Or if they do learn from words, don't give them the full answers, right? Let them figure it out, because that's important.
There's a friend of mine said to me one day, there's a time and place for everything, right? Sometimes you need to talk about a squat and sometimes you need to do a squat, right?
Yeah.
And chances are, and this is me in the front row of it, chances are what you're doing at the moment is the opposite of what you should be doing, right?
Oh.
So if you're doing squats all day, every day, and 14 cycles in a row, maybe you should talk and think about a squat from time to time. But vice versa, like you're talking about a squat all the time, you're figuring all the muscles out, but are you actually squatting? Like, are you picking up a sandbag and doing 15 squats?
Yeah.
And it's hard because you got to be very open to yourself. You got to be very honest to yourself and be like, okay, am I the thinker or am I the doer? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're all making mistakes. Like I tend to think too much because then I'll need to train more. Period. And if I train 10 times a week and I'm not really thinking about my training, okay, this is where I need to step back, maybe get a coach, be like, okay, what am I not doing?
Yeah. It's so funny because you and I are very similar in that aspect where like there will be times where I find myself thinking more about training than actually training. Because I start to, it's like it comes and goes in waves, right? Where like one week you're like, man, what am I going to do for my warm up? What am I going to do for my main lift, my accessory? Well, during my warm up, I have to focus on this. During the main lift, I have to make sure that I feel these muscles and I'm working my hips and blah, blah. And then my accessory has to, right? You think so much about the parts rather than just like like who gives a shit? Just like grab the yoke and go for a walk, right? So I'm constantly shifting between the two where it's like, worrying so much about everything versus like just going to the gym, doing a quick warm-up set with the yoke and then putting weight on there.
Mhm.
Right. Both are effective, but right, you kind of swing too much in each direction. And like you're saying, you kind of have to take a step back and be able to look at where you're at and then do the opposite.
Mhm.
Where it's like, okay, you're kind of thinking too much about this now. Like you need to just do more, right? Like be actionable about it. Don't think, just like look at something, grab it and do it, right? And then sometimes you're like, okay, you're not thinking at all.
Yeah.
you know
And I think the only way to figuring it out, I mean, either having a good coach or a good mentor, is overdoing both sides from time to time, right?
yeah.
Because when I started, like, what was that, 5, 6 years ago, um, I think it was after the first Strong Fit seminar. Like, I literally did like 3 times a week a brutal sled session, like 3 sets of reverse sled drag, 3 sets of harness bear curl, finish it off with a 200-meter sled push like 3 times a week, plus some sandbag squats, plus some carries. Like, like I think for 6 months straight, I did 3 times a week the same session.
Wow.
I've learned so much. Not only positive things, like that's not how you should train, but it's you gotta overdo. Like, we're so scared of overdoing things, right? And obviously you shouldn't kill yourself, right? But that gray area, like nobody wants to be like, okay, let's do it binary. Like, you do too much or you do too little, and then you're gonna switch it up, right? So and I think that's where you find your same. I'm sorry. That's how you find your own balance
Mhm.
in overdoing stuff. All right. Okay. So go to a cabin for a week and just think about training. Awesome. Good. But then come back and train for a week straight every single day for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Overdo things and you realize, okay, this is too much. Like, I don't want to spend a week in a cabin. I don't want to spend a week of killing myself on the sled. Okay, let's wiggle that thing in the middle and figure out, okay, what's the portion that I need.
Yeah.
And that's gonna help you so much in figuring your own way out, because we, like, so many people talk about finding your groove, your way of training, what you should be doing. It's like, but how? Like what's the actual thing that you're going to do to figure that out? And then that silence and nothing happens. The same with, okay, we got to find more muscles and we got to do this. Okay, what should I do tomorrow at 7 a.m. when I show up in the gym? Practically speaking, what should I be doing when I show up? And that's, I think, where you need a little bit of guidance, where you need, maybe it's a PDF, maybe it's videos. It's like when you can hold on to it and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for 6 weeks straight. I'm going to overdo it. Awesome. And then I'm going to have a conversation with my mentor, my coach, and he's going to help me balancing it out over the next, whatever, 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's, at least that's how I did it. Not how I did it, how I'm still like very early in the process of, okay, so I know a couple of things about the nervous system, I know a couple of things about muscles, I know a couple of things about anatomy, training, periodization, all that stuff. And I want to find my groove, but you gotta overdo it in both directions brutally. And I think we're so scared of doing this nowadays. We're so scared about overdoing training because could get hurt. I asked my coach in my gym the other day, because he was thinking about, okay, maybe I'm overtrained and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, did you ever get injured in training? He said, no. It's like, then you're not pushing it hard enough. I'm not encouraging you to get injured,
Yeah.
but if you've never been injured, like, you're far away from that edge. You're far away from that threshold, right? And I'm not saying do this under a 250 kilo back squat, but man, like, that's part of the journey. Like, you got to do stupid shit from time to time. Be like, okay, my shoulder hurts now and it's going to take 4 weeks or 6 weeks, but hey, I'm going to figure it out how to fix my own shoulder now.
Mhm.
So we love to be in that cuddled middle position of, yeah, I'm doing a sled session every now and then. Yeah, I'm doing sandbag squats and I'm thinking of this. It's like, okay, please, I encourage you to um, not with intensity push a little further, but just maybe a week of like insane volume in training, or a week of insane volume of reading, or because you're gonna figure out, okay, this is way too much. Same with drinking.
Yeah,
Same with mobile phones.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
always the same thing. Like what kills us is that constantly a little bit. It's not really deadly, but it's not gonna helping me much.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting because I um, like I definitely think I'm trying to think where it's like you have to know what it's like to give your all in terms of, and talking about training here, not binge drinking. Give your all in drinking, man. Or anything, right? Where it's like, or using drinking as an example. Like, whoa, I got blackout drunk. That didn't feel good. Like, not doing that again. And then it's like, okay, I went a week without any alcohol, and that's, feels pretty good. But it's like, you know what? Maybe I do want a beer or two. And then you understand, right, where that line is. Um, and same with training, right? Where 300-pound sandbag, I'm gonna go and pick it up, and people are like, "What? You're crazy!" It's like, I don't care. I'm gonna try, and we'll see what happens. Right? If you don't see what happens, then you don't know where you stand in terms of like, I'm not strong enough to pick that up, or I'm super strong, but you know what? I felt that all in my lower back. So how do I train so that the next time I go to pick it up, I'm using my glutes and my hamstrings, right? It's a balance of stress where it's like no stress or too much stress. And I think each modality has their own level, right? Like I think people who are vested fully in CrossFit or that high intensity stuff, way too much stress all the time. Like every single day is 100%. Versus people who maybe are on the Orange Theory side, or even like standard periodization, they don't experience that too much stress, right? So they aren't able to pull that like violent aggressive side of themselves out. So you have to experience both to know when to do what. It's yeah, it's back to that like paradox. You have to like get both sides. um yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's not well executed in the training world, in the fitness world, because you're either, as you said, you're either on one extreme, meaning pushing every session to the max, or chilling out to the max in every yoga session.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, it's so hard for us human beings to combine those two, right? Because for whatever reason, we hate and love extremes at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we need that thrill, but we hate to be exposed to it too many times, right? But you need it anyways, because once you're facing an extreme situation, like you want to be prepared to it, whether that's physically or mentally, right? And I think that's a good connection to the nervous system. Is okay. How do I want to prep myself for extreme situations? Most people think they're not going to come, and then they're surprised, and then they're like, oh shit, and then they freeze, and then they don't know what to do, whether it's physically or mentally, and it's like, I can't get out there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you are, if you like it or not, you will be pushed to your limits at some point. Most of the time it's going to be mentally nowadays, because nobody gets pushed physically like anymore. but mentally you will be, and you are constantly pushed to the extremes, right? And that's why you need to learn how to deal with that in training with the extremes. Like how does it feel on the sled? How does it feel on the sandbag squat? How does it just making sure you're learning about yourself, you know which muscles to use, etc., and face extremes voluntarily. And I think that's a very important word in the fitness industry. You can only deal with your own whatever dilemma, call it trauma, if you want to face it voluntarily. Nobody can bring you to that point. Nobody. Yes, I can force you to go there physically. I can force you to do that to go there mentally, but I don't think that's a good idea. So for me, right? So my approach is, okay, I'm going to show you what's possible, and I'm going to lead you through the process, very structured. And whenever you want to go there, I'm there with you, but I'm not gonna lead you to places that you're not ready to see yet. Right. And if you don't want to push the sled faster that day, I'm not gonna be the guy with the whip and hit you with the whip and say, let's go faster. I'm not gonna allow you to be lazy either. Right. So that's the fine line. Like if I see you could go harder that day, I'm gonna tell you that. Like I'm gonna call you out on it. Like you're just being lazy.
Yeah.
You're not scared. You're not blah 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 blah. And that's a fine line. So getting people to that line and voluntarily pushing harder or voluntarily stepping back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You know what I mean? So I think that's an overlooked aspect of training. But I think people should figure out the extremes and switch around more often.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I think.
And I'm sorry, give me just one more sentence. I think that should give so much relief to coaches out there, right? Mm-hmm. Because that means you're not failing. That person is just not ready yet. Mm-hmm. Like I'm failing, quote unquote, probably in every single session that I'm coaching, right? But failing is always it's a perception thing, and it's so my expectations were differently, and that's why I'm failing. Mm-hmm. And you're totally excluding the person in front of you. Like I cannot fail if I do something good for the person in front of me.
Right. Like the decision to push more or to scale back more is on them, but you provided a perspective for them to make that choice.
Yeah. So let me give you a practical example. So somebody needs to eat more food because they're underweight, right? Mm-hmm. You can force feed them, which is make them push hard on the sled,
right?
Which will be very fast. You just shove it up the throat, right? Or you start a very long process of educating them and showing why it's important for them and like building up on every single training sessions until maybe they start voluntarily changing it.
Right. Right.
That's just how I see it. So I call you out. I call bullshit if you're being lazy on the sled, right? But at the same time, respecting your daily performance, however you want to call it. Maybe you had a bad day. Maybe your kid is sick. Maybe you had a shitty day at your job. I think you got to be very sensitive, very, very sensitive when to push people. So intensity is not always the solution. Sometimes it's stepping back and doing the opposite, right? And I don't have the solution, right? It's just my perception, and this is how we're approaching training, etc. I think for 90% of the people, like they need a little bit of a like push, so to speak, right? But some don't.
Right.
So I think, yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, and you'll get, I think, constant feedback from the person or class that you're working with will kind of help give you an idea of where to push them more. You know, where it's like, They walk in, the warm up, how'd that feel? You know, I'm not really feeling it today. It's like, all right. So we're obviously not going to do max effort stuff with you because you're not all there mentally. But if someone comes in, they're like, you know what, that felt really good, and like I'm feeling right today. It's like, all right, well, I know I can push the weight on the sled, push the distance, or push the reps, or I could demand a lot from you today. So I think that constant feedback goes along with what you're saying.
And I think that those experiences and those perceptions start with your own training. And that's why I mentioned it earlier. That's why it's so important. Like if you're not training, whatever the number is, I say 5 times a week as a coach, not because you want to look like a model or a fitness model, because you wanna put yourself into a situation that you'll be able to talk to people about my experiences, right? This is how I felt that day. That's why I stepped back. That's why I stepped forward. That's why I was lazy. That's why I pushed it harder. That's why I was just exhausted. That's why I stepped back, right? And those are my experiences, and that's what I did to kind of balance it out. That's the only thing I'm saying. And I can't decide that for you, but maybe that experience helps. Like my story helps you, and you're kind of the same person. And if you're not, I can still help you, but it's not my experience. So I gotta be very careful what to do with that person. Like if a different personality comes in than I am, like I gotta be very careful not to put my experiences into that person and be like, okay, this is what helped me, whether it's on the sled or sandbag squat, or this is how I fixed my squat. Yes, this is how I fixed my squat, but it's not yours, right? But
Right.
you gotta fix your own problems first. That means you gotta be. This has nothing to do with how much weight you are moving on a back squat. You gotta fix your own problems first. Physical issues, muscles not working, stuff that you don't want to do, whether it's light long sandbag carries, heavy short sandbag carries, whether it's EMOM stuff, MREP stuff, whether it's short sled pushes, long sled pushes, whether it's lunges, like stuff that you hate doing. Lunges, for example, weighted lunges. Like that's the worst for me, right? So chances are I should be not be doing more of them, but approach them with a different mindset and be like, okay, why do I hate them so much? It's like, okay, so I'll do 6 sets of 20 meters of weighted lunges. Like it feels horrible, right? And you got to figure out, okay, because that muscle is not working, or just because I haven't done it yet, like enough. Maybe, who knows, right? But you got to fix yourself first before you can be able to help anybody out there. That's just my perception and my opinion.
Yeah, and it's that, to bring everything full circle, right? It's your experience will help so many more people than you would think. But then there's also that collaborative part where it's like, okay, maybe your experience alone isn't cutting it, so you have to draw from somewhere else or someone else that you learn from to then provide with the person in front of you, where what worked for you isn't going to work for them, right? So it's that collaborative effort and constantly being able to adapt and scale for the person is, I think, a big overlying theme.
And just to put it into perspective, like just from my own personal story, is I probably not figured it out, but I started figuring out probably like 8 months ago in my own training. I'm 41, almost 41 right now. So that means it took me almost fucking 40 years to start enjoy hard work in training. And it simply started with, I was on vacation last August. I had a couple of sandbags in the trunk, had I call it Grexy. It's farmers, handlers, and a frame carry and a yoke, etc. So I had that with me, a couple of plates, nothing crazy. And we were on vacation, right? So like no big reason to train. It's vacation, right? And I just procrastinated, and I was thinking about training basically all the time. So you should be doing something. And that went on for like a week, and I didn't train, right? Fucking lazy. That's it. And one day I was like, no. You're going to go to the car, you're going to pick a sandbag and move it for 10 minutes. That's it. And I'm not going to allow myself to spend any more time on my own training. 10 minutes. So I did that for a week. The second week, I started to train a little bit more. And then I started figuring out, okay, so I got to make this enticing for myself again, right? You do 6 sets of farmer carries for 20 meters. I went to the parking lot, put on some weight, whatever was in the trunk. Like I couldn't choose much. It's like, whatever. If it's too light, I go longer. If it's too heavy, I go shorter. Who cares, right? I'll do 6 sets or 5 sets or 4 sets, and I'm not going to allow myself to stop any earlier or do one more set. So I have 30 minutes of training because my son wants to play with me. And I'm not going to waste 2 hours of warming up or thinking about, like, as a gym owner, it's very easy to get overwhelmed with all the operational work. It's like, no. Part of my business is I need to train. Like I gotta lead by example, and I have 24/7 access to gym, my own gym. But put the clock on, you got 30 minutes. That's it.
Yeah.
Because having a gym and having 24 hours access to it, for me personally, led to not training, which is ridiculous. It's insane, but that's just the way it is. So I was like, okay, 30 minutes, I'll put the clock on, whatever. And if you want to make the most out of it, well, I'll do some carries, I'll do some heavy carries because I don't have much time. So restrict yourself, but voluntarily.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we have so many options nowadays. We have so many opportunities. You can go to Harvard online. You can, I don't know, an AI can speak for you, whatever it is. Like there's so many opportunities, but sometimes it's the other way around. Like sometimes it's the restriction that's gonna make you happier than having 3 hours of free time for training.
Yeah, and I that's a big piece that I think about for nutrition, right? Like there's so much food available to us, right? There's so many ways to eat that like sometimes you have to pick 2 or 3 things from each macro and just stick with that for a week, right? Like there's again this fine line between variety and exclusion, right? Like you want to be including all these different things, right? Because they're good for you, but you can't include them all at once in one session, right? So you have to kind of put the horse blinders on and pick maybe just one thing or 2 things and just do it for 60 minutes. If you find yourself just frozen in space, and that's happened to me. Like you're talking about it in the sense of being an owner, right? Mm-hmm. And having all this gym, the same as a coach or a trainer, like you're around the gym, maybe you're at the gym all day, and it comes time for you to work out and you're like, I don't even know what I want to do. It's
That's
like
weird.
Well,
yeah,
it's
I know.
such a weird feeling because you're like, I'm surrounded by all these dumbbells, all these kettlebells, all these barbells and sandbags and stuff. And it's like, for a hot second, you ask yourself, like, what's wrong with me? It's like, why don't I want to do this? And then you're like, you just have to, whatever, hop on the rower and get moving, or just get the blood flowing to clear the mind. Yeah, it's a weird situation to be in.
Yeah, because it feels so unnatural of being positively egoistic, right? You know what I mean? It's you care so much about your clients, you write programs, you teach them, blah blah blah, that sometimes you're not taking care of yourself. Mm-hmm. Like the daily hygiene, whatever that means for somebody. For me, it's training. For me, it's doing certain stuff physically every single day. because otherwise I just lose so much energy, and I don't want to function that way.
Yeah.
Right. So in times like this where everybody's focused on, okay, let's make the whole world better, but what about making yourself better? And that will help the world be a better place, however we want to call it, not to be too philosophical about it, but you know what I mean. It's like, okay, maybe at some point it should be, okay, what can I do to make myself better? And then I'm gonna better my surroundings, I'm gonna better my whatever, my fiance, my spouse, my family, and then that circles grows wider and wider, and you get better. Like the first thing or the thing you should be doing is, like, again, fix yourself with training. That's what we're telling our clients. And sometimes we're not doing it, or I haven't done it for a very, very long time. Right. I was thinking about it, and maybe in my head I could fix my own shoulder problem or somebody else's shoulder problem. But practically speaking, I fixed dozens of shoulders, but not my own one, which is weird.
Right.
It kind of makes sense, but just being honest to yourself and allowing yourself to be in the process, being more egoistic about stuff that you should be doing and yet that you need to be doing, like it's super critical.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, man. I'm sorry, but I gotta go. My son's desperately waiting for some downtime with me.
Yeah, no worries.
It was a great conversation. Again, I just love having conversations. Like, I'm a small guy in the middle of Austria, just doing a couple of good things, and there's so many smart people out there and great coaches like you who can contribute to whatever we want to achieve. And we should just talk more about it.
Yeah,
that's all we should achieve.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I love talking about this stuff. I could go forever. So thank you for having me on, and
You're welcome.
allowing that space.
Awesome. So Jacob, thanks again for taking the time. Really, really appreciate it. We've been almost 2 hours in. It's really nice talking to you, and maybe we'll do a second episode in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm open.
All right, man. Thank you so much, and let's talk soon.
Yeah.
Bye, man. Have a good day.
Later, you too.